jump in, I just want to say that, oh my god, let's start again. Hey everyone, it's me, Mira, and I am back, and I have a really interesting slash kind of racist story to tell you today with my roommate stories. Let's just jump in. So the first roommate, we'll call her roommate A. A little bit of backstory. It was just before second year, all of us roommates. It was our first year, all of us moving out of dorms, out of our parents' house, and actually being in our own apartment, being in a more like adult situation. So a lot of the things that happened with the first crazy roommate story could have been prevented, which is why I want to share it. And so yeah, so Amy and Cece were away abroad. Jess and I had found a sublet to take over their spot until they had come back. So she was a friend of a friend, roommate A. She kind of knew my other roommates. We were like, okay, well, we'll take you in. It can't be that bad. All she really talked about was how she misses her boyfriend back in Vancouver, how she hates it in Toronto. And often I would see her come back with like huge, and I mean massive bags around this big of different designer things. And what she was doing was she would get homesick and her boyfriend was missing her, so she would go off and buy him Gucci belts, Gucci like men's bag, a tie, and all of these expensive things she would buy, and then she would ship them over to him. And she was always dressed in designer labels, buying designer labels, so I kind of felt that it was safe to assume that she had some sort of money to be buying this. Which is fine, that's great. Like if I had the money to buy it, I would too. But this is where it gets confusing. So she mentioned to Jess and I that she wanted to move out. And we were like, okay, sure, that's fine, but let us know properly beforehand so that we can find someone. And she was like, okay, yeah, I'll let you know when I plan on moving out, like as in giving notice. But she never gave us notice. It was only that one talk that she's thinking of moving out. She never once gave us a date. She never once said 60 days from now, 30 days from now, nothing. She just said, I'm thinking of moving out. Then come, I believe, July 1st, she's, the week before July, she's like, guys, I'm leaving now. We're like, wait, what? What do you mean you're leaving? You have to stay here till August. She's like, well, I gave you notice, so that's not really my problem. Like, no, you never gave us notice. You just said you were going to give us notice. She's like, no, well, that is notice. And Jess and I were just in shock, like how can we afford to pay her rent? And we're crying. We're like, you can't just do that, you can't just get up and leave, that's not how this works, like you should have respected us a little more. So I called up my friends, I called up lawyers, I created the other problem was that we didn't have a formal agreement. I know, how stupid are we? I've gotten much better since then. Now I know you have to have a roommate agreement, you have to have a contract. We pulled out text messages and emails in which she stated she wanted to stay from this date to this date with the expected pay of this per month. And so we pulled those emails out, we created a document, we went to a lawyer, we went through all the paperwork, we called her over, and we're like, hey, we're gonna go to the lawyers if you don't pay your money. And she's like, you know what, because you're treating me like this, I was gonna offer to pay some, but now I'm not gonna pay any. And we're like, what do you mean? Like you had an obligation to this place. Like, you know what? Actually, I can't afford this. And we're like, excuse me? You're literally walking in here with a new Chanel bag. You're telling me you can't afford this? But yeah, anyway, so she was talking out of her butt. And I was like, you know what, if you're not going to be constructive and if you're going to act like this, really, you can get out of my house. Luckily, thank God, we found someone amazing who came into town and needed a place to stay for those 2 months. So luckily we had the situation figured out, but yeah, she would have screwed us out of $1,000, like a couple $1,000. So yeah, that was my first crazy roommate story, and lesson learned, always have a contract. Always vet someone beforehand. These are just little things I learned over 3 years living with roommates, and because I didn't know this going in, that's what happened. So story number 2. So roommate B. So this is in 3rd year. Amy introduced me to her and she was like, this is someone I'm thinking of subletting my room to. You should meet her, you should talk to her. I met her, didn't like her at all. So anyways, I got scolded and I was told, Mira, don't be judgmental. So I tried, I'm like, you know what? Okay, we'll take her in. Part about her was that let me just check my notes. So this roommate B, the weird thing about her was that she worked in a political party. I won't say which one. What was weird was that she would have these very explicit conversations at night, and I would often tell her, please, roommate B, could you be quiet because I can't sleep, I have class tomorrow, whatever. And she would try to be quiet, but she was usually never quiet, and I could always hear her conversations, which is how I know this. So she worked in this political party and she was gloating to her friend how she moved up in whatever position she was, and she's now doing a higher up position, and she was very happy about that, and that she thinks it's because of the fact that she was sleeping with someone very high up in this political party, and that because of that she's kind of getting these extra perks. That's fine. The person she was sleeping with isn't a married person or whatever, so you know what, 2 adults doing whatever they want, that's not my business. But then what started becoming weird was when a few weeks later this person put her back in her old position, and she was again on the phone with her friend, this time like hysterical, being like, how could you? How could you do this to me? I'll ruin him. I have the receipts. I kept every single text message. I kept all of the PayPal transfers. And I'm just in my bed, 2 o'clock in the morning, trying to sleep. But then I hear this juicy story, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna listen. But yeah, like, I don't know what the hell was going on with them, why he's sending her PayPal money or whatever, but she was incredibly angry with him, and she was like, I'm going to ruin him, I'm going to destroy him. This girl was clearly a little bit like off the handle, and that still isn't even the craziest part about her. So one day I was in my kitchen just eating, and she strolls in late. She woke up late and she sits on the couch. And she's like, oh my God, Mira, I had the craziest night. And I was like, okay, yeah, like I was eating. And she was like, yeah, I got so drunk. I've never been this drunk before. And I'm just eating. I'm like, oh yeah, that sounds great. Like, why, how do you know you were so drunk? And she was like, well, I was dancing with these brown guys, and I never talk to brown guys. I don't even touch brown guys. And you know I'm drunk when I'm paying attention to brown guys. And I'm sitting right there like, can she see I'm brown? Like, I understand that I may seem very westernized, but I am still a brown person. Does she not realize this when she's saying this to me? Like, what am I gonna say? Like, ha ha ha, same? Like, oh my God, that sucks. Like, later on, like a couple weeks later, so I was trying to make conversation, I was trying to be nice. I was like, so roommate B, why are you here? Like, what do you study? What are you wanting to do? And she was like, you know what, I want to be a teacher. I was like, oh, that's great. Like, what type of teacher? And she was like, oh, I think I want to be an elementary school teacher because I think that's when you can really help kids, and I really like that age group. And I was like, oh wow, that's really sweet. Like, are you wanting to be a teacher here in Toronto or like back home? She was from a smaller town in Ontario. And she was like, oh, definitely back home. Like, definitely not Toronto. So I was like, okay, like, what's wrong with Toronto? And she was like, well, you know, they like mix children here, and I don't believe in mixing kids. And I was like, what do you mean mixing kids? She's like, you know what, I don't think that we should have different like racial groups together in school because that creates gangs. She said explicitly, I want to teach white kids. And I was like, is she blind? She's saying this to me as a brown person, that she doesn't believe in mixing races. Like, what is wrong with you? And I was just disgusted. I was angry that a person like this is working in a political party that is involved in creating laws for our country. So yeah, I was just not happy with her. I did not like her attitude. She was rude, she was racist, and I couldn't wait for her to get out of my house. But yeah, those are my 2 crazy roommate stories. I hope none of you ever have to experience either of these type of people, but if you do, I would love to hear about it, and thank you so much for listening.